Hello, Lit fans! Welcome to this day's episode of Lit Talks. For today, we're going to discuss a lot of questions like when does literary teaching begin? Does literature have to be so strange? How do we make literature teachable and relevant for everyone? So let's find all that and more today in Redefining Literary Teaching, only here on Lit Talks.
What if you'll be required to read this text?
And now it was when I began to keep a journal of everyday's employment, for indeed at first I was in too much hurry, and not only hurry as to labor, but in too much discomposure of my mind. And my journal would have been full of many dull things. For example, I might have said thus, September the 30th, after I got to the shore and had escaped drowning, instead of being thankful to God for my deliverance, having first vomited with a great quantity of salt water which had got into my stomach, and recovering myself a little, I ran about the shore, wringing my hands and beating my head and face, exclaiming at my misery, and crying out, I was undone, undone, till tired and faint, I was forced to lie down on the ground, to repose, but dared not sleep for fear of being devoured. What was that? I don't get it. Maybe I could ask my teacher about this. Mm, excuse you, ma'am. Would you mind giving me an idea of what this text is about?
Wow, you're reading a classic Robinson Crusoe. You know what? That piece contains many societal issues like civilization, Christianity, self reliance, and others.
Oh, now you lost me there, ma'am. That's a lot to process.
As a literature teacher, did this ever happen to you? If your answer is yes, then how do we solve this dilemma? Often, teachers would be quick to judge these students and may come to the conclusion that they don't have the intelligence nor the imagination to read and understand good books or stories. But that may not always be the case. Such a student does not mean that he cannot recognize the words, nor that he cannot grasp what the author is telling him. What he does mean is that he does not perceive what the author is saying. In other words, he cannot see the application of the author's theme to his own experience. Not only does this method allow the students to pass over much of the richness that can be gained through vicarious experiences through literature, they also have another basic weakness. They add nothing to the student's ability to evaluate anything he reads. Such a method guides him towards some understanding of a specific selection only. He is left with nothing in his mind that will encourage him to read on his own and that will help him to pass an intelligent judgment on what he reads independently. So, most probably, reading comprehension occurs better if the reader has the schema about the text. What if the prior situation was handled this way?
What was that? I don't get it. Maybe I could ask my teacher about this. Mm, excuse you, ma'am. Would you mind giving me an idea of what this text is about?
Well, that's a great read, you know? I totally understand where you're coming from. Don't worry, it's actually quite a lot to process. So, when you were a kid, have you ever felt like you don't want to be alone and it seems like you cannot survive on your own?
Sure, yeah. I highly feared the idea of being alone.
Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, the text you are reading is pretty much like that. It's the story of Robinson Crusoe who experienced a shipwreck and was alone on the island. Having only his wits, patience, and faith, he was able to turn a horrifying thought of living alone in a dismal island into, well, a tropical paradise.
From a new perspective, we can indeed claim that one may have difficulty understanding the idea presented by the author if such did not exist in the reader's world. As Paulo Freire mentioned in his work, The Importance of the Act of Reading, He stated that reading the world precedes reading the word. Seldom did the students understand that the selections being studied were works of art. Seldom did the students realize that as works of art, these selections had personal explanations of life circumstances, which is the theme. Unfortunately, a lot of times educators tend to forget this and be all intimidating about handling literature classes or tend to treat literary pieces as works rather than text. However, if literary teachers successfully unlock a student's schema, there are endless possibilities for the learner, such as love for reading and widening their perspectives about the world. This difference in the way readers approach literature was further differentiated by Roland Barthes from work to text. He mentioned this in two of his seven propositions, namely sign and plurality. If it is a piece of work, its sign does not involve arbitrariness in its literal understanding or interpretation. Meanwhile, if it is a text, then its words or phrases may be exchanged for others with similar meanings or associations. The meaning of the text becomes interrupted since it encourages the reader to produce overlapping ideas and make associations. Hence, the plurality of meaning. To summarize, it is safe to say that as literary teachers, we should remember that teaching of literature should start within the reader's mind. A teacher should make an effort to guide the student into integrating the theme into his own experience. Although we might use the same teaching style, we can never expect our learners to have the same degree of appreciation and understanding of a literary selection since they have different experiences. Any more than two golfers using the same techniques will develop the same proficiency in the game. Yet, if these readers are taught a method to analyze literature, just as the golfers, if taught specific techniques, will pursue their endeavors with greater discrimination and enthusiasm.